I'm Relevant founder Cameron Strang, and this is the Relevant Podcast Impact Conversation Series. On this episode, we've got two amazing new guests for you. Hopefully you saw our first episode with Jimmy Darts and our last episode with entrepreneur David Meltzer and Pastor Mark Batterson. If you haven't seen those already, definitely do yourself a favor and go check them out. They're right here in the feed. Well, today we've got two amazing guests who have made an impact on billions, yes, billions of lives. Our first guest today is adventurer, survivalist, and global TV icon Bear Grylls. For years, he's pushed the limits of what a human body and spirit can endure, whether crossing oceans, scaling mountains, or dropping into some of the most unforgiving environments on the planet. His career has taken him from the British Special Forces to international fame, turning extreme survival into a mainstream phenomenon, even winning a few Emmys along the way. But behind the grit and the danger is a quiet through line that shaped every chapter of his life, his faith. Bear has never shied away from talking about God on some of the world's biggest platforms, often long before it was considered acceptable or marketable. And now with his new book, The Greatest Story Ever Told, which explores the adventurous life of Jesus, he's setting out to share the hope and courage that have carried him throughout his career. In this conversation with Relevant's managing editor, Emily Brown, Bear discusses the connection between spiritual and physical survival while opening up about both the truths and doubts that have shaped his faith. He also opens up about using his platform to talk about God, even when that hasn't always been accepted. And he reflects on bringing faith into unexpected and wild spaces. I'm excited for you to hear more of his story. But before I get to that, I quickly want to thank the presenting sponsor of this 6-part Impact Conversation series, Christian humanitarian organization World Vision. Did you know that you could sponsor a child through World Vision this holiday season? Because of their community-focused solutions, for every child you help, 4 more children benefit too. In just 5 years, they've helped impact the lives of over 200 million vulnerable children by tackling the root causes of poverty. Learn more about their life-changing work and how to be a part of it at worldvision.org/relevant. Okay, without any further ado, here is Relevant managing editor Emily Brown's conversation with Bear Grylls.
Well, hello, Bear. Thank you for joining me today. You have lived such a really fascinating life, and there's a lot to dive into. But I first want to start with your latest book, The Greatest Story Ever Told, which tells the story of Jesus in this really exciting and new perspective. What inspired you to write this story and in this particular way?
Well, first of all, it's been the hardest thing I've ever done. I really mean that. But also the best thing, you know, and it kind of crept up on me left field. I never expected this to happen. And I don't know, I think, I've got to do so many, special things in my life, so many expeditions, so many trips, so many TV shows over the years. But I don't know, this is different. This is under my skin, in my heart. And also it's a thing that people respond to more than any other project or TV show or book or anything like that I've ever done. I mean, I get people writing to me from all over the world about this, from all different cultures and faiths as well, all different faiths. They write to me and they kind of invariably say the same thing, which is that I had no idea. I had no idea that this is a real story of Christ. And I think so many of us grew up with, myself included, such a sanitized version of Jesus. And it's always sort of white robes and smiley and nice. Yeah. And actually the real story is fierce and challenging and painful and beautiful and rooted in friendship and sacrifice and adventure. And I don't know, I just thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write it. I'm going to write the real story of Jesus as a thriller, but 100% theologically accurate from start to finish his life. And like I say, best thing, but the hardest thing. And the thing I'm also the most proud of, I think. That's the other point, is the other stuff is just stuff. If you win an Emmy or, I don't know, those things are nice, but this is our lives. It's our where we build our hope and our confidence and our ambition and our future and our risk-taking spirit. This is all of our stories tied up in his story, if you like. That's what history is, his story. So, yeah, like I say, really proud. And I'm really touched that it's reaching so many people. I mean, I never thought this would go to number 1 And it went straight in the UK in the Sunday Times bestseller list at #1, and it's been up there ever since, and it's been a true privilege. And I also feel it's only just beginning. That's the other exciting thing, is that it's developing a life of its own beyond me, and I like that.
Obviously, faith has been a part of your life for years. When did you start working or like getting the idea for doing a project like this?
Well, I was actually filming. I was in the jungle. I was there for a month. I was with my eldest son. We were filming a Netflix show. and I just started writing this thing. And I had a real sense of like, clear the decks, and just do it. And I kept thinking, somebody's got to have done this before. But I realized nobody had ever just written the story of Jesus like this. Written a zillion books about faith and about him, but never just written it straight. And, the New Testament, if you ask people to read it, it's hard for people just to kind of like pick up the Bible and read. But I wanted to write something that was really easy and fast to read. I kind of struggle reading. So I've written it as like 3-page chapters, super short, punchy. And then we worked with a theologian from the Chosen series who we were just starting to film a series with called Chosen in the Wild, which is a version of Running Wild, where I take these stars away. And so they were amazing. They said that they gave us access to all of their theologians to make sure the book was 100% right and accurate. And that really made a big difference, to actually, that was a real process in itself, kind of crafting that. But it came in the jungle, and I wrote solidly every night. My son thought I was on drugs. He's going, well, you like on something. You're like not sleeping. It's just like, I leave you at 11 o'clock at night, and we come in at 5 in the morning to go off again, and you're like still writing. But it's like this went on for about a week of it just poured out. And the hard work really was after that, then working with these theologians and kind of tightening. Because the one thing is, I didn't want to change a single word Jesus said. So I lift his dialogue from different versions of the Bible, from the Message version and the easy to read version and all of these different versions. And we kind of, put the scene set around it, I suppose. But the words, we didn't want to change a single word. And that was really strong for me, of like, just super clear. It's just like, don't change even a comma from the Bible of the words Jesus said.
What's so fascinating about this is obviously people know you as a wilderness expert, or wilderness survival expert, but you kind of show what spiritual survival looks like, especially in the wilderness, like what that looks like. And I'm curious, how do you see maybe physical survival and spiritual survival intersecting?
Well, it's all the same thing. Truth is just different arena. Life is a survival exercise. Life is a battlefield. Spirituality is a journey, all an adventure. So, I don't know, I feel like the things that really matter to stay alive in survival are often the same things that matter in life, and they're the key part of spiritual journey as well, which is, seeking, having that determined, never give up spirit to find your way out or find answers. I think so much of spirituality starts with that, a willingness to be open and to learn and to seek, and then not relying on our own strength. That's a magic of our faith, of a relationship with Christ, is that we're not relying on our own strength. Now we have something else inside of ourselves that's stronger. Self-confidence is no confidence at all, but standing in the light of the Almighty is power. It's like the hand and the glove, isn't it? Glove on its own has no power. It's like limp. The hand inside it, it's strong. And that's what's helped me in survival. It's what's helped me in life. And it's a key part of my journey with Christ, is like, let him do his job, which is he's come to save us, to seek us and find us and save us. Let him do his job and then be that power in our lives. So that's how I approach it.
I feel like you were kind of just hinting around this, but I'd love to ask directly, like, how has your faith just helped you throughout your career as you've done these wilderness shows, as your platform has grown? Like, how has it helped you stay grounded?
Well, I think, first of all, I have many doubts as well. I really do. My faith doesn't mean I've got it all together. Like I say, it's a journey, not a destination. I have many, many days where I really struggle and many doubts. But like I say, I've learned it's not about me. So, faith sustains us and holds us through the good times and the bad times. And, faith and doubt, two sides of the same coin. Isn't that what they say? And I like that. And I learned so much by writing this book. I kind of look at every stage of this, every chapter, every encounter with, what we call the disciples, but really they were just a rough gang of his friends. They were full of doubts. I would say 99% of their journey with Jesus, they were scared and full of doubts. And that gives us all hope, but at the same time, we're given a power inside with which to be brave, and I've read the Bible 3 times before writing this book to make sure we kind of have a feel. And 365 times in the Bible, I learned it's a command, do not be afraid. More than any other command, 365 times, do not be afraid. So I don't know, I'm a soldier. I try and take that to heart, try and be brave, try and lean on him. Don't make it about ourselves. Don't be scared of the doubts and the struggles and the fears. Lean on him, draw from the deep well, and move forward.
As you were reading the Bible over and over again, was there anything that just surprisingly stuck out to you that you just were not expecting to learn?
I think how normal Jesus was, and like extraordinary, but also ordinary. Like, we've done a pretty poor job really over 2,000 years of turning it into a religion as such, and making it all very formal with rules and prayers and etiquettes. But life with Jesus wasn't like that. It was just raw, fun, all about freedom, always about healed and affirmed. He spent a lot of time making fires, cooking fish, and walking and laughing. And there was very little kind of religion there. It was all about relationship and being close to him. I think that was the main thing I learned, is if you read the story of him and his life, the place of power is to be close to him, not on your own power. Look at all those encounters. The woman who just fought to get through the crowd just to touch his cloak. Every encounter is just the place to be was close to Jesus. Why was that? Why did just regular people flock to him? And why did the religious elite fear him so much? And this is what I've tried to kind of drive in the book, just spend time with this guy, because it's not the story you expect. And it's a really beautiful bridge into faith. And, I've read this book to people in hospitals, in prisons, in places of other faith as well. And it's just a universally incredible story. It's not maybe the greatest story. If it's true, if he was who he said he was, he isn't just for people in this country or that segment of society. He's for people of all faiths. He's calling us all home. And it is, if true, undoubtedly the greatest story ever told. So, yeah.
It was interesting when you were talking about learning about the humanity. I'm thinking about The Chosen, which has also, I think, really humanized Jesus. And I know you've worked with them, like you mentioned, on The Chosen in the Wild. What made you want to work with Dallas Jenkins and the Chosen team in the first place?
Well, I think we're all doing the same thing, as trying to shine a light around the world and show the real Jesus. We all do it through different mediums. But those guys are great. And also, it's such a huge show now. People don't really realize that around the world, how big it is. But again, I think because a lot of the actors are unknown, you don't actually get to know them. Mm-hmm. So Chosen in the Wild was a really fun show to do, because you get to know, actually the actors, people that so many hundreds of millions of people have grown to love. What actually is Jonathan Rumi like, or Dallas, or any of these guys? I mean, for me, it was a lifelong dream to adventure with Jesus, do a running wild with Jesus. That's as close as I'm going to get, maybe. I had to resist a lot of kind of jokes about fishing's going to be easy this evening. And, I'll use a canoe across the lake, you walk. But I really had to resist a lot of jokes. I think poor Jonathan lives with a lot of that. But actually getting to know the real guy behind it, he's such a gentle, sweet man and hasn't had an easy journey. And I think living with the that title of playing Jesus has been tough in so many ways for him, but he's a very humble, honest, great guy. And actually, I'm super proud of that episode. I think it's one of the best ones we've ever done in terms of sort of revealing the heart of a character that people don't always know so well away from acting. And Jonathan was very honest. So, and likewise Dallas and the others, so very different shows to what we've done before into this new genre. But it all ties together just beautifully and accidentally and good timing in terms of with the book. And I like that, and the Chosen are really getting behind the book and endorsing that and supporting it when the shows come out next year. And like I say, it feels like we're all doing the same thing, just shining a light on the good stuff and showing our real Lord through it all.
Mm-hmm. It does feel like in recent years, there's been this really beautiful sort of merge of faith in entertainment, and whether it's in TV shows or in more books or even music, things like that. And I know, you've been in the industry for a while. I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on why this shift is happening now?
I think there's a hunger, and then once people start looking, it's back to the seek and find, isn't it? And also, it's good to show courage and stand up. And what is there to hide? I don't know. I always feel like you're not being asked to advocate. You're not standing up in court for a bad person. You're standing up in court as an ambassador, as a witness to say, the Prince of Peace is love personified. If you don't believe me, read the story. Read the story. It's just love. You're being asked to stand up and be a character witness and an ambassador in your life. The Prince of Peace. What an honor. I've got nothing to hide. I don't need to. People might laugh occasionally or ridicule or belittle, but that's okay. We're standing on solid ground. We're standing with him beside us. And he speaks to it. He spoke on that hillside, in that ravine to thousands of people that time and said, you're blessed when people, persecute you in my name, you're blessed. When you're at the end of your rope, with less of you, there's more of me, you're blessed. He said it. So it's like, it's okay. You can work hard and stand up and champion that. And some people will listen and some won't. That doesn't matter. We're called to live with integrity and to try and speak love and kindness and truth. So nothing to be ashamed of. So maybe people feel that spirit more and more. And I think once some people start to do it, then others get courage. And then you look at 365 commands in the Bible again, and you get a bit more courage. And you draw on the deep resource, and it hopefully becomes a positive circle. But there's a lot of pain and persecution in the world. And I think it's a time to stand up. And stand up for what a message to stand up for. It's a message of love.
Like we said, you've been outspoken about your faith for years. Do you remember maybe the first time you ever kind of spoke about your faith on like a really public platform and what that experience was like?
I think I've tried to do it quietly through the TV shows for many years, so I think in the TV shows, again, sometimes like networks would cut those bits out if I'd be in a little camera and in a jungle and saying, I try and finish the night curled up in a ball, think of my family, say a prayer, and get ready for the next day. Sometimes be as little as that. And sometimes the networks would snip it out, but it's always been there. And then it would eventually go in. And then I think when I did that prayer with Obama on that Running Wild we did with the president that time, and that really was meant to be off camera, behind the scenes at the end of our journey together. You're still sitting president at this time. It was a kind of, no president had done a TV show like this ever before. And so we were like pretty nervous about it, but it went great. And at the end I said, would you love to pray for you? I just felt he's got like a lot on his shoulders, which is true.
Yeah.
And they put that in, that follows me to this day. Even when I went then to film with Prime Minister Modi in India, he said, you prayed with Obama, we should pray. And it's like, it builds as a life then. And so then it was kind of out there and it's good. It's everything to be proud of.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good reminder that just one step of faith can can lead to more like acts of faith that can happen, which is really cool. So thank you for writing this book, and thank you for speaking with me today. I really appreciate it.
No, lovely to meet you, Emily. You take care.
Thank you. You too.
That was Bear Grylls. Check out his new book, The Greatest Story Ever Told, which is available now. And check out Chosen in the Wild when it drops on Amazon next year. Okay, for part 2, joining us is Bobby Gruenewald. He's the founder of YouVersion and one of the leading voices in Christian innovation. He helped launch the Bible app on day 1 of Apple's App Store back in 2008, long before anyone imagined what mobile technology would become. 16 years later, it's just surpassed an incredible milestone, 1 billion downloads. Bobby's story is remarkable. He's a former entrepreneur and tech thinker who felt called to bring scripture into the digital age long before that idea made sense to the wider church. What started as a small and simple website has grown into one of the most influential discipleship tools in the world, reshaping how millions engage with the Bible every day. In our conversation, Bobby shares how God has repeatedly exceeded his expectations and how he's tried to faithfully steward the message of Jesus in a world where technology is evolving at lightning speed. It's an encouraging reminder of what can happen when calling and creativity collide. But before we get to that conversation, I quickly want to remind you that this conversation series is brought to you by Christian humanitarian organization World Vision. World Vision is reaching 1 new person with clean water every 10 seconds and 1 new person with a hand washing facility as well. A couple of years ago, the whole Relevant office ran their Global 6K to help raise money for clean water. It was a lot of fun, a little sweaty, but a lot of fun. And we raised a lot of money for World Vision, so that was great. Learn more about their life-changing work and how you can be a part of it at worldvision.org/relevant. Okay, here is Emily's conversation with Bobby Gruenewald.
Bobby, thank you just so much for joining me today. It is so nice to speak to you as you're celebrating a really big milestone for YouVersion with 1 billion downloads. I would love to know, when you first started YouVersion, what was the initial vision, and did you ever imagine it would reach this scale?
The short answer is no. I've never imagined it. When we first started, it was in an airport security line. At least that's where the vision first came back in 2006. And I was just in the airport security line in Chicago, wondering if there's a way to use technology to help me read the Bible more consistently. So basically, I had a vision for 1, not for 1 billion. And that resulted in a website that actually failed, that led us to try it on a mobile device, which worked. And then Steve Jobs announced the App Store in early 2008, and we were just blessed to be able to be there in the App Store on the very first day. So that, even at that point where the App Store launched and we had 83,000 people installed on the first weekend, even at that point, you would never have gotten me to say that one day we'll have 1 billion, devices. And I just didn't have that kind of faith. I honestly it was like a step-by-step process where I kind of just had just enough faith to take the next step. And now that we've witnessed, so God do what he's done over these, last 17 and a half years, it's really hard not to have much more faith, meaning have really big faith. And so we're celebrating a milestone, but that's how we see it now. We see it as just a milestone, and the vision's like so much bigger. So there's a ton of momentum, ton of positive things happening, and growth beyond 1 billion. But no, when I got started, this was not the plan. Just turns out there's a lot of people like me that actually want to read the Bible, but have trouble reading it. So that's what we learned.
When I was researching for this, I did not realize that the Bible app was one of the very first apps available, like you mentioned, on
very first
kind of day 1.
Yeah.
How did that connection happen? Like, how did you get involved with that?
Well, I mean, we had the website that we redesigned to display on a BlackBerry at the time, and this is early 2008, and we saw it work. Well, Steve Jobs just announced the App Store and the ability to build apps. None of us, I didn't know how to build an app. I'm not an engineer. We found a 19-year-old on our team who loved Apple, and that was about all you had to have back then to build an app. And so as a part-time project, Apple had a process to just submit the app to them for approval. And we seriously didn't know if it would get included in the App Store. It wasn't like we had some relationship with anybody at Apple or any contact or anything like that. Steve Jobs didn't call me in advance to give me a heads up, on the App Store or any of that stuff. So we were a little bit surprised that it made it in the App Store. We just didn't know if Apple would want to have a Bible app in their App Store. And I don't think they were actually like really concerned and looking at what apps were in and what apps weren't in. I think at the time we were fortunate because there's just maybe only 200 free apps that were even ready to be in the App Store, on the first day. So it was probably just more of a first mover advantage just because we moved really quickly and had an app ready to go. Of course, today there's millions of apps. But back then that was the big surprise. We made it in the App Store and there was only 200 of them.
Obviously, the app has changed from day one, and things have been added on and all this stuff. How do you decide when you want to add something new to the app or to change something within it?
It's a great question. So early on, we were just trying to get some basic features in there that we wish we could have gotten before it even launched. It was just happened so fast. And there's only a few months to get the initial app done, that what we started with was so simple and so basic that it was too basic and too simple. Over the years, we've added features almost entirely based off of what we see people responding to and hear people asking for, and recognizing our barriers to people's consistency. So we create features that, are all designed around daily use. That's really the focus of most all of our features. We learn a few things from other apps, not necessarily other Bible apps, but just other apps in general, like how they handle engagement, how they help build habits, things that we can kind of take and apply and use in our context. In some cases, though, early on, since we were one of the first apps, we were pioneering some of those things, like learning how to do habit formation, because there weren't a lot of other apps that were doing it at the time. And then we look, in addition to features in the app, we actually look for other apps that we create. So most people don't know, or not everybody knows, we have a family of apps. We have the Bible app. We have the Bible app for kids, which is designed for young children, like ages 2 to 5 here in the U.S. and a little bit wider range of ages in other countries. But it's a completely animated Bible story app that's entirely different experience because it's for a completely different demographic. And then we have another app called Bible App Lite that is not available in the US, but it's a simpler app, but it's mostly just designed to work completely offline and on smartphones that are less connected and less capable than the ones that we have here in the US. So it's used in like sub-Saharan Africa, some parts of Latin America, Indonesia, India, some of those types of countries and those areas. So it's not just features, but we're looking for kind of different approaches to how we reach different groups of people globally and we'll continue to do more of that, as we go forward.
What has maybe surprised you most about how people around the world engage with scripture as you've expanded to different countries?
There's different countries have slightly different approaches, but for the generally speaking, people are very similar globally. So there's some things like we in our Bible App Lite, we have a memorization game that we've kind of built into it that's pretty popular. The Bible plan structure that we have in the Bible app, it seems to resonate globally. We just have different Bible plans, like thousands and thousands of them in just different languages and different contexts. We are regionalizing some of the content in the app, but as we do that, we've had feedback that people actually like the global feel, where they see faces and that are different than theirs, and contexts and parts of the world that are different than theirs. So we're trying to find that right balance, right? Because we want people to see themselves. We want people to feel like the app's built for them, but we also want them to recognize they're part of a global community. But the habit formation stuff that we do, things like streaks and the way we do plans and plan reminders and all of that does tend to work, pretty well globally. I mean, like people respond to that. The biggest variable that's important is to be able to have the Bible in someone's heart language. And, there are trade languages that people are familiar with, but when they see and read or listen to God's word in the language that they were born, learning when they were young, that's a key. And so that's why we've been very committed to Bible translation. It's also why we, provide the Bible in over 2,300 languages, and we'll do it in every language as soon as it's translated, because we really feel like it's important to make it available in people's heart language. And it's one of the big advantages of digital. We love print Bibles. We love all kinds of Bible engagement, not just digital Bible engagement, but there are just things you can do with digital that you just simply can't do with print. For like read the Bible in English and then read it in a really small language from a tribe in Latin, somewhere in Latin America. Or I can introduce it and I can find the native language of the person driving Uber, for me, or the person that I'm connected with in some city. And there's just things like that there's no way I could carry around 2,300 Bibles and be able to do that. And so there's, I don't know, I got way off topic on your question, but the answer is, I think, globally, engagement, having a Bible in someone's heart language is another big factor in engagement.
I did want to ask, because you are in a really interesting position with YouVersion, because you have this faith goal where you want people to read the Bible, but it is also a business. So there are metrics and deadlines and competition. So how do you protect that faith mission while still being in like a business mindset?
Yeah, so it's really interesting question. So one point of clarity is that YouVersion is actually a not-for-profit, and we don't monetize anything. We don't sell any data. We don't have advertisements. So even though I come from a business background, it's a little bit of probably the reverse way that you asked your question is how I would answer it, which is like, first and foremost, YouVersion's a ministry that the people that are our team are 100% like sold out to the mission. Like they come just really, really believing missionally in what we do. But I actually believe in applying business principles to how we make decisions and how we leverage data to make good, to be informed, how we test things, how we do kind of A/B tests to say which of these two things work better, because we want to be more effective. But at the core, the motivation behind all of the sort of business thinking is all about improving a ministry outcome, because our business model is very freeing. It's actually a donor-based business model. So our revenue all comes from donations from people that support YouVersion financially to kind of make it possible for other people to have the Bible app for free. What that enables us to do, though, is just make all of our decisions about what we do with the app entirely based on engagement or how well it connects with people. We don't have to, be really worried about how it drives revenue or how it drives subscriptions or how it drives some of those types of things. So we're not really left with a lot of competing interests, which there's nothing wrong with business. And like I said, I'm business background, so I invest in businesses and all of that. So I'm not anti-business. It's just that we have kind of the freedom to be able to build partnerships and collaborations that don't have to tie to a bottom line that's different, that's financial. For example, it's all about more of a ministry outcome.
You mentioned, you have a business background, and I am curious, what made you step away from the business world into the ministry space?
Great question. My wife and I got connected into a local church near where we built a house when I was still in business. And we fell in love with the church, like just the life change you could see happening. It was just like everyday people that you could tell in some cases just had really rough challenges in their life, but they were finding Jesus. And we were like, this is kind of an environment that was so exciting for us. We were already believers, but we just wanted to be in it. And so I started playing keyboard on the worship team. We got into a small group. We call them life groups. And the church is called Life Church. It was started by Craig Rochelle. So when I sold my second company, there was an article in the newspaper that came out with a picture of me in the paper. And one of the pastors of the church said, "Isn't that the guy that plays keyboard on the worship team?" when he saw the article. And he wanted to go to lunch. And I initially thought he wanted to go to lunch to help me calculate what 10% was on the number that he read, in the newspaper about the sale of the company. But instead, he actually asked me what I plan to do next. And honestly, I thought this is what God designed me to do, to start and sell companies, because I had favor in it. And I was 23 at the time, and I'd already had a couple companies that I'd started and sold. And I said, well, I'm going to start another company. I didn't know exactly what, because I was in a mode of just exploring. And he said, well, have you ever considered using what you're learning in business and technology, and specifically, have you ever considered using that like on staff at the church? And I said, no, I've never considered it. And honestly, I never thought like the two things could ever be connected. Like they just didn't seem like they made, like, I don't know. Our Life Church was very low tech at the time. On top of all of those things, it was amazing church, but like air conditioning was the best technology. They really didn't have much of anything. And so he said, well, would you consider it? And I was like, no, because I love my church. And I thought if it became my job, that wouldn't be good. I just didn't want the relationship with the church to change, because I just thought this is such a great thing I've got going with the church. So I started to volunteer in other capacities, because I just didn't even know or even think that the church needed technology or was thinking about technology. And over the course of about a year of volunteering, it just became super clear to me that this, in an unexpected way, this is what God was calling me to do. I still would never have thought that it would be 24 years later, when I'm sitting here talking to you, that I would still be serving the church and on staff of the church and one of the leaders. But God obviously knew and had a plan for me. And so I look at it now and realize it all makes sense. I mean, there's parts I'm sure I'll never fully understand until on this side of heaven, but the journey that I went through in business just gave me these really unique experiences that let me think about the world a little bit differently. And when you combine that with the strength of a really, really healthy and thriving local church that we get to be a part of, it became the platform that enabled us to do things like Church Online and like YouVersion. And so I'm super grateful I get to wake up every day and do what God created me to do. It's part of a local church. Most people don't know that, because it's not designed to promote our local church. It's really designed to get people connected into Scripture. But that was how I went from business into ministry, was because somebody saw something in me and challenged me to think about it. And then God did the rest. I mean, it was just God's direction. And I don't regret a bit of it, and just never look back on it, because it's like, why would I ever trade what I get to be a part of for any amount of money or any amount of business success?
Mm-hmm. It's so funny to hear you. You said earlier that, you never thought about mixing faith and technology, because I feel like technology is just everywhere in our lives these days. So of course it would be kind of like mixed in, but I would love to know, like, from your perspective, where do you see faith and technology intersecting next? Like, is there anything on the horizon that you're really excited about?
Well, like you said, I think technology intersects almost all parts of our life. And so it's natural then that it intersects faith, because that's obviously logical. I also feel like technology is inherently amoral. It could be used for good, or it could be used for evil. And so I think as believers have a responsibility to figure out, how do we use technology to serve kind of missional purpose. It's why with almost every new thing that's out there, I ask like a how can question, like how can blank actually be used for the gospel? How can blank be used in a way that helps me share my faith with someone else, or help me connect with Scripture, or whatever it might be? I do think that there's some really interesting questions, though, that we get to wrestle with as it relates to AI, and some of the things that we're watching happen today. This technology is a little bit different in that the core technology at the very, very core is inherently amoral, but the way that something might be trained or might be developed can kind of all of a sudden give it a direction, or give it, sort of a response that may inherently lean away from what we would say is great for our faith. So just simply leveraging those technologies without kind of a thoughtfulness about how they respond, or about what biases might be built into them, or like what training might have gone into it. There has to be some thoughtfulness about it. Just simply saying, oh, great, we just figured out a way to create a chatbot off of, ChatGPT that we told it to answer like a pastor and answer with this set of values, and now it's got these amazing responses. It's like, that sounds really good, but we just need to know a little bit more, because you're dealing with technology that's non-deterministic and that's built on probabilities, and it's trained on Reddit, and it's trained on X, and it's trained on things that are very human, but not necessarily maybe the best and maybe what we would want, So that's given us, we leverage AI, generative AI in very specific ways that I think are helpful. But we also understand the limitations of it. And I think it's just important for there to be a level of discernment. But that's true for honestly any technology or anything that we do. I just think it's even more true right now because we're actually working with technology. I'm saying we collectively are working with technology that we don't fully understand, and we don't fully understand how it works. And that's a little bit different than it was like, how do we build a website, or how do we build an app, or how do we build this? Because we could actually make the technology do what we wanted it to do. And now we're basically hoping the technology will do what we hope it, like we're using technology and we hope it does what we want it to do. And I think that's why there has to be some more thoughtfulness, and there's various ethical questions to kind of answer and ask about those things. So there's just different dimensions today with some of this new emerging technology that are important conversations, important things for us to consider. And this is coming from somebody who is very much an early adopter. And I'm usually like, let's do it and let's figure out all the problems later. I just feel like there's something different about this that requires more thoughtfulness. But does that mean that there is a place that this intersects faith? 100%. Like, it is intersecting, our faith right now, and people are using it to ask faith questions and to try to get answers, about faith or about the Bible, which is why it's important that we sort of do our best to understand how to do it effectively and safely.
That is very comforting to hear, because like you, I've seen the chatbots that are pretending to be pastors, or I think someone even pretending to be Jesus. So I am glad that you are not rushing in, that you're, like you said,
we're very
questions.
You won't see it. I can promise you this. You won't see a chatbot in the Bible app ever unless we are absolutely sure that we have handled it in a very safe way, an ethical way, and are confident. We are not about just trying to get something out there just to say that we've got something that can compete with whatever else is out there. It's important to get it right, because the only thing worse than Grok or ChatGPT answering moral questions is the Bible app doing it built on the same flawed technology. So you actually have to be thoughtful about it, and we will. What is out there today, unfortunately, most everything I've evaluated, I've seen out there, doesn't have the level of safety or regard for some of the things that you would have when you have an app that's at scale. And we know this because we know the types of darkness that people are bringing into the Bible app in terms of what they're facing and what they're experiencing. We see it every day. And so we always want to make sure that we're responding, or we have content, that sort of helps people in those times of need. And it would be horrific to me if we just sort of set something out there that's non-deterministic, that we can't even know how it's going to answer, and it was not handling those moments effectively. And so that's why there's a thoughtfulness, and there's a tension inside of me because I'm an early adopter, and because I want to move quick, and because all of that is the case. But I also want to make sure that we literally understand how the technology has limitations, and not just sort of buying into a future promise of something that isn't where it's promised to be, is not where it's at today.
We started off this conversation about talking about the 1 billion downloads that YouVersion is celebrating, which is just really exciting. But I'd like to push even further into the future. When YouVersion celebrates like the 50-year anniversary, what do you hope is the legacy that it's leaving behind?
I feel like with what we've seen God do, we definitely feel like we're stewards of something that He's done. And as such, like, I want to steward this and beyond my lifetime. So I want to really set this up in a way that We've got amazing team, amazing leaders. And I just feel like as long as God continues to trust us with this, we want to do the absolute best job we can stewarding it. And there'll come a day when it's not my responsibility, to do that any further. So I'm thinking kind of beyond, certainly beyond me, that we steer beyond it. But the wildest dream would be our vision, which is God's word, everyone, everywhere, every day, which literally sounds impossible because it's got 3 everys in it. But it's a posture that basically says we're not going to stop because we really feel like it's everyone. And so we're like thinking about groups of people that don't have access yet and how we might be able to get to them. And how can we make it, design it in a way that connects with people, meets them where they are. And yes, it's in the form of apps today, but maybe that's going to look different, in the future. And so we're sort of open to whatever God might want to do, and however technology might change and whatever opportunities. We just want to have that, like I mentioned earlier, those how can questions I ask are oftentimes because I don't want to get stuck just in the paradigm that we're in right now when there might be a more effective way to engage people with scripture. It's how we got to where we are is by asking those types of questions. And I want to keep that posture, as we move forward. I think, I really think that 1 billion is small. I know that it's a number that you celebrate and people feel like it's big. It's the number of devices and it's not the number of people. But it's still bigger than I ever thought, when we started, but our faith, is certainly much bigger than that today. Like we've seen God do too much to not believe that a lot more is possible. So we're in a point of acceleration. We see an opportunity globally right now. I don't know how long this particular window will exist globally, but there is an openness to scripture that we've never seen before. Gen Z, open to scripture like we've never seen before. I saw a stat that Gen Z in Australia, 83% are open to the Bible. Wow. We saw UK print Bible sales up 87%, I think, in the UK from Gen Z specifically. And we have seen college campus revivals breaking out here in the US. That's been going on for a year and a half or maybe even longer. Just this kind of incredible momentum that's happening. I don't think it's an accident. In fact, I think some of it's connected to what we were just talking about with that. We have people that are questioning the veracity of everything they consume because we're inundated with content that we don't know if it's real or if it's true or if it can be trusted. And one of the consequences of that's not a bad consequence, is a good consequence. And that is that people actually are searching for what is true, what can be trusted. It can be real. And so this is such a moment for the Bible because the Bible is unique and it stands alone in its category. There's nothing else like it. And so we find, there are people that are turning to the Bible first. It's literally their first step in faith. They just think this is a book or resource that is different than the other content that's online. It's different than what I read in Reddit. It's different than all of that. It can be trusted, which is also why as we approach AI as a tool, we're going to be very thoughtful because I don't want to be in the same bucket as AI. I want the Bible to be in a different category where it belongs. And I talked to a pastor just the other day and they said they're seeing people that have no faith experience whatsoever showing up to church with either a print Bible or the Bible on their phone before they get to church, and they've never been to church before. So the first thing they thought is, I need a Bible, before they even found a church or a faith community. And that was where their interest was. So we see this as there's an urgency around it, but it's not an urgency based out of fear. It's an urgency based out of opportunity. And you asked me what I see 50 years from now or whatever. And the answer is I see so much right now that I'm very excited about what 50 years could look like, because I feel like there's this massive momentum that's happening right now. But I hope that whoever's stewarding this 50 years from now is continuing to steward it with the same level of passion that we carry with it, because we just really see this as an opportunity for our generation, hopefully many generations to come.
It's an exciting moment for faith and for the Bible and Christianity and the church. So I'm excited about the work that YouVersion's doing and the billion downloads and the 2 billion downloads that I'm sure are coming. It'll be great.
Well, I'm grateful for you guys. I think this is also a great opportunity for you all. And the content that you produce is showing how, a relationship with Jesus is relevant to all parts of our life, is such a key thing for a whole group of people out there that are really open, really interested, or really, kind of leaning in, kind of wondering what that's all about. So the work that you guys are doing is a great example of something that God can use in this moment, probably more than any part of relevance history. I really feel like that's kind of what the zone that we're in right now. So anyway, thank you for being willing to share what God's doing through YouVersion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for talking with me. This has just been such a fun conversation.
That was Bobby Gruenewald. If you haven't already, open up the YouVersion app. You have it on your phone. You do. Check out the amazing Bible plans that are available. They're free. Just use it. Do it. You won't regret it. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this installment of the Relevant Podcast Impact Conversation Series. If you've enjoyed these conversations, help us spread the word. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an edition. We have 3 more coming up. They're incredible. I'm Cameron Strang. We'll see you next time.
Relevant Podcast Network.